We see firms blow up all the time by overscaling without the revenue to back it up. Money has been cheap over the last 10 years. So financial discipline around hiring that next resource or funding that next project or taking on debt, it still had ramifications. The ramifications are going to increase, and they have increased.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Incident Report presented by Quest Technology Management. I'm Paul Burke, Director of Technology Communications. Every week, I'm joined by VP of Sales and Partnerships, Adam Burke. The Incident Report brings you conversations with thought leaders, business innovators, and channel mavericks to help you stay productive and agile in a changing technology landscape. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Incident Report. I'm your host, Paul Burke. Across from me, Adam, how are you doing? My co-host, my friend, my brother.
Good to be here, Paul, as always. Yeah, doing well.
Good weekend?
Solid weekend. We actually had some cold weather down here, a little bit of rain. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but fighting
sound a little sick.
Little bit, dealing with it. Taking the zinc, taking the coldies, and getting through it.
Got it. You're a trooper, Adam. You're sacrificing yourself to put out another episode to help educate people, let them know what's important.
The wheel does not turn, the wheel does not stop turning. And again, a lot of coldies, a lot of cold beds. Might not be as sharp as normal today, but the wheel does not stop turning. Things continue on.
Yeah, well, let me help you out. So people might be wondering, what happens on this podcast? What's going on here? I was scrolling through Apple, it popped up. I thought I'd give it a listen. I'm on the verge of dropping off. Don't do it. Keep listening, because here's what we do. We're talking about information in the channel, things that we think are going to help you thrive in the channel, stories that will make you a better partner, better vendor. So it kind of touches all the points within a channel.
Absolutely. We skim the articles of the day, what's happening, what's going on, and we talk about it. And you know what? I got some feedback from some folks. We do this every week. Every week we go through the articles, we grab a couple. Every once in a while we bring on guests, but in no way are we pretending to be experts or know-it-alls in these scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times we're basically just sharing our experiences in dealing with different aspects of this. So if you have an opinion, we'd love to hear it.
Wait, what happened?
No. It's good. It was good feedback. It was good comments. It was good, and sometimes we talk about things that maybe we don't have the research on. Maybe we don't have the 100%, dialed in knowledge. I had one of my buddies who happens to have an MBA. Oh, great MBA. Just kidding. I love you. And he was giving me some feedback on my opinions about some of our financial leverage buyout comments last week. And you know what? I graduated from UC Davis with a degree in economics, solid C average. All right. And
wow. Okay. So one of our listeners is coming in telling you to stay in your lane. Hey, Adam, stick to the things you know. Wow.
Yeah. It's not the first time. And you know what? It's not going to be the last. It's not going to be the last. We veer and drift a little bit outside of our comfort zone, because you know what? The fool precedes the savior, Paul. The fool precedes the savior. And you got to be willing to look like a in order to grow. So that's
the important thing is to have phrases like the wheel doesn't stop spinning and the fool precedes the savior. Because that, the phrases, Adam, that's what really sells it. So
yes.
Yeah.
And as I'm told, I am often wrong, but I am never in doubt. And that seems to work out.
Which probably fools a lot of people. Let's be honest.
It does. I'd be a great con man. Fantastic con man.
That's a good discovery you made about yourself. So, hey, if the listeners aren't getting anything, at least you're realizing you'd be a great con man down the road. So that's fantastic.
Yep. Great. It's all about confidence, Paul. It's all about confidence.
Snake oil salesman, just kind of like riding from town to town.
When you're talking about leverage buyouts and you don't know the exact framework of how the private equity firms source their junk debt, don't go into a description monologue about it. We'll bring him on. He can talk through all the minutiae and the nuances of it. I'd say I was about 80% there.
How great will it be when he comes on if we get somebody with a doctorate that messages you and being like, that guy with an MBA doesn't know what he's talking about?
No, again, we love the comments. We love the fact that you're listening. We're having fun here. And we're going through articles and just trying to share a little bit of our insight. So all joking aside, if you do have any comments, questions, or input, we'd love to hear it here at the Incident Report.
Let's get into it. Let's get into some stories.
Yeah, let's do it.
So channelinsider.com, which we've mentioned before. Channel Insider, you produce some good articles. They're very thorough. They're very thoughtful. If anybody from Channel Insider is listening, great job.
Appreciate what you guys are doing. Absolutely.
Common vendor miscues that hinder the partner experience. Now, before we dive into this article, I just feel it's important. I need to share this. I feel, Adam, we are reaching acronym overload. There are just too many acronyms, and for unnecessary things. For instance, first sentence in this article lists the partner experience as PX. It doesn't take us much, people, to just say partner experience. We don't need PX to represent that. The words do a great job representing it. I just wanted to share that. I just wanted to share how I feel about the acronyms, and it's going too far. There has to be a breaking point.
Paul, something you're going to learn someday is people love acronyms, especially in the IT channel. There's X as a service, there's partner experience, there's customer experience, there's UX. I went like 5 years trying to figure out what a UX engineer was. Didn't know, just kept repeating it. And then eventually you Google it and you figure things out. Like, oh, that's just a common word. Hey, user experience. Oh, okay.
Did you know there's a website out there where you can create new acronyms? You can say, this is the acronym I want it to spell, provide words and suggestions to kind of like help it along, to kind of know what sort of topic you want the acronym to like stand for. And then boom, it kind of takes over.
Is there an acronym for that service?
If you want to go make yourself some acronyms, everybody listening, check out the description. I'll post it there. It's totally free. I made some acronyms for the word chicken. Nothing was super great, but I got chicken acronyms now. All right. When the vendor channel partner experience goes well, both sides benefit through the increased sales, higher renewal rates, and smooth relationship with relatively few glitches or missteps. But when it goes wrong, it drastically hurts your business. The 4 most common vendor miscues include inadequate security, insufficient marketing support, overconfidence in a partner's business skills, and failure to nurture relationships with partners. So let's just take it one at a time. Inadequate security.
The security concerns when you're bringing organizations into your environment, you always got to make sure it's not necessarily, it's not just your security controls, but it's the people you do business with. We're in an environment right now where everything's tied together. It's reputation as far as your organization, as well as the organizations you choose to do business with. Helping to alleviate that is make sure that you're auditing your security controls. You're going through those vendor security reviews. You have third-party documentation around your controls and your policies. And then you're also kind of enforcing that standard when you bring on new suppliers, new organizations that can help out. Where do their developers live and reside? How are they connecting to it? What countries do they live in? We're in a very geopolitically difficult situation right now where a lot of engineers and people like that may or may not live in certain countries in Eastern Europe. That could be a little bit challenging right now. So just understanding where the code's coming from, who's developing it, how they're managing those controls. Your reputation as a IT vendor, as a supplier, as a managed service provider is not only dependent on what you do, but it depends on who you do business with and who you choose to bring into your sphere.
Great points. The second point was insufficient marketing support. There are so many small MSPs serving tiny slices of the market that these firms typically have small crews that are generally overloaded. Expecting them to take on sophisticated marketing duties is unrealistic, so vendors need to crank up the ability of marketing-related skills, training, and services for partners.
We see with our partners all the time. Hey, how do I get more leads? How do I communicate these skills and these available services to our customers? We see this all the time. So we built out some simple marketing campaigns, some simple landing pages, and some reusable content. And you really have to just kind of enable your channel with, hey, here's some cool wins. Here's some good stories. Here's some examples of how you can start the conversation. I think some firms go a little bit too far down the path of enabling their reseller MSPs and agency groups. And so that they want them to become kind of the expert and talk through all of the potential options and solutions and things like that. That can be a lot.
It's like finding that happy medium.
Yeah, give them something to start the conversation. Give them something to be curious about. Give them something to communicate to their clients like, hey, are you looking for any help in this area? Did you know we could help with XYZ? Here's a way that we could do it. Here's a good success story that we've done in the past, right? If you work with higher education or government or healthcare, have some vertical stories that you can kind of rinse and repeat and tell the story. People love stories. The bits and bytes and all that kind of stuff is great, but people at the end of the day buy from people who can articulate the complicated in a simple way. And if you can do that by giving them some nuggets to get out there and plant the seed with their clients, I think that's kind of the happy medium folks are looking for.
People love Star Wars, but do they love just the special effects? No, they love the journey of one farm boy to blow up a Death Star. Spoiler alert.
Yes. Well, yes, but so by the way, segue. Watched Star Wars with my 6 and 8-year-old a little while back, and the graphics still hold up. Still hold up on the original. A little goofy. Princess Leia's, transport ship run away from the Imperial cruiser. Little goofy, but still pretty good.
Holds up. What is that? 30 years? 30 plus years?
Yeah, it came out in 1977, so more like 50 years, Paul.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
so all those math majors are going to get at me in the comments as well.
Yes.
Up next, number 3 in our list of miscues: overconfidence in MSPs' business skills. Vendors taking on MSPs should be aware training goes beyond an orientation to their products and discounts. Those vendors that fail to help partners expand their operation via the availability of business training are likely to see sales stutter. Adam, what do you think about this one?
The business skills aspect of it is cash flow, right? Maintaining your accounts receivable and your accounts payable. Just the focusing on the like financing and the funnel, like how are you getting your next customer? How are you going to pay for that? What does profitability look like? How much revenue should you have before you hire that next engineer? We see firms blow up all the time by overscaling without the revenue to back it up. Money has been cheap for the last 10 years. We went in this on the last show. Money has been cheap over the last 10 years. So financial discipline around hiring that next resource or funding that next project or taking on debt, it still had ramifications. The ramifications are going to increase, and they have increased. Just basic business. It's great you're an engineer. It's great you can deploy IaaS and do reserve instances in AWS and replicate this server from this data center to this data center. But if you can't manage your accounts receivable and your accounts payable, you don't matter. And I know that sounds harsh, but you're in business to make money, period. That's it. If you can't make money and you can't run a profitable business, you can't hire people, you can't employ people, you can't be the top 20 places to work and have all that nice, fun stuff that everyone likes to talk about. It's money at the end of the day. So helping organizations manage cash flow, get the appropriate financial controls in place, huge area where we see firms blow up all the time because, hey, it's a great idea. We should hire 10 engineers to deal with all the inbound opportunities that this amazing product is going to surely generate.
So are you saying providing a ping pong table and all the breakfast cereals for your reps isn't necessarily going to make you money as a company?
Not necessarily going to make you money. It'll make you popular with the millennials and the Gen Zs, and they'll really appreciate you when they job hunt you 6 months into their taking their new role. But it's not going to keep the lights on. So get a little bit on the operations side there. Make sure you're having people help you with that.
That's great insight. Thanks, Adam. Point number 4 on miscues: failure to nurture the vendor-partner relationship. Those vendors that actively seek to create the best partner experience are likely to win out in the long term. Now, Adam, I don't want to talk my own book, and I'm excited I get to use that phrase because I've heard you say talk your own book many times on this podcast. If you'd like to see instances of Adam saying talk your own book, just listen to episodes 1 through 37. But I finally get to use it. Adam, I don't want to talk my own book, but I feel like Quest does a very good job nurturing those relationships.
We do a great job, and I think there's always areas to improve. something that we're constantly focused on is making sure that, one, we understand what's important to our partners. So I was on a call with a vendor today, and what's driving their behavior? What are they interested in? What do they care about? How are they getting paid? It's kind of an uncomfortable question, but I typically ask it of every vendor that we do business with and every partner that we do business with. How do you make money? How are you tracked? How are you seen as successful within your organization? Because it's not always the same for everyone. We can make an assumption like, well, yeah, you're obviously comped on gross profit, or you're comped on top line revenue, or you're comped on annual contract value, or you're comped on the way people are paid and the way people make money is very critical to understanding that relationship. And then what are you investing in? So for some of our partners, what would you like to pursue? We have a lot of partners in the technology service broker market who do amazing jobs in telecommunications and unified communications sales and call center, and maybe they do a little bit of DR, but they're struggling to get into security, or they're struggling to get into application development, or they'd really like to invest more time in helping their clients consult around business continuity planning and security policies, right? Where do they want to go? There's a million different directions you could go. What's important to you? And so we're trying to invest in understanding where they're at and where they want to go. And then if we have some building blocks to help them along the way, awesome. Let's help them along the way and augment, what they don't have in place. It does take a lot of work though.
Where do you think you got good at asking uncomfortable questions? Have you always been comfortable doing that?
No, I suck at it.
I'm terrible at it. Do you think like the Army helped you kind of get more comfortable with that?
I think voluntarily going into a difficult situation, volunteering to do something that sucks, your mentality changes. So like if you volunteer to, hey, yeah, I'll go jump out of some airplanes and hike and walk around and live outdoors for a while and do all kinds of stuff. If you volunteer for that, your mentality is, hey, I'm in, I'm going for it. If you get dragged into that situation, your mentality is different. The idea is, it's the simple thing you've heard a million times probably when you talk to people in the military: embrace the suck. It's gonna suck. Like having an uncomfortable conversation about money is gonna suck, but it's gonna happen whether you want to do it or not. If you voluntarily approach it and say, hey, I'm gonna ask this uncomfortable question up front because it's gonna have to get answered. And whether we go through this entire sales cycle and I don't ask the uncomfortable question up front, and then we get to the purchasing or the day 2 support, that question, that unknown, you don't get away with anything. It's not going to go away just because you're a nice guy. The money question is going to come up. How people get paid is going to come up. Expectations around services is going to come up. Roles and responsibilities is going to come up. Hey, if this doesn't work, what happens? If this doesn't hit your deadline, what happens? If there's a change request, what happens? Asking all those uncomfortable questions, all of that's going to come up whether you like it or not. And probably for the first like 3 or 4 years when I was out of the Army and came onto Quest, I would kind of dance around that because I didn't feel like I had the right to ask it. And then once it clicked in my head, like, hey, this is gonna be tough no matter what you do. Like you're gonna have to have this uncomfortable conversation no matter what you do. And if you approach it the same way you approach, like, let's go out and run for a long time, or let's go out and do this for a long time, or let's go out and do this challenging obstacle course or whatever, you're going to have difficulties. If you volunteer for it, 10 times better result, at least in my experience.
I've never thought about embrace the suck, but when you talk about it that way, it makes a lot of sense. And I like that you mentioned that, hey, when you moved from the Army to Quest, you had a difficult transition. You had to learn how to embrace this in a different way.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily connect the dots that way. That, hey, this is a challenge. It's a challenge like any other challenge. It's not a physical challenge. It's a mental, relationship, negotiation, ego, all the above kind of challenge.
I think that's a really helpful story, so I appreciate it. Any final thoughts about this article before I move on?
Yeah, no, I think Drew Robb did a great job on this Channel Insider. And yeah, check it out.
Next article is Channel Vision Magazine, channelvisionmag.com. Rural U.S. overpays for internet, expanding digital divide. I read this, and I read it a couple times because ultimately, I don't want to bury the lead here, but what this boils down to is like, hey, the Northeast, very fast internet. Everywhere else, about the same.
I was reading it too, because this is, we talk about talking book, right? So someone's talking a book. Why did someone write this article, and what does it really mean? And you look at New Jersey has an internet value index of 0.99, and New York has a value index of 0.92.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think about it, what is between New Jersey and New York that maybe has really, really important things that speed, discovery, information, and money all have to do with each other? What do you think?
I don't know. Adam, help me out.
Rhymes with clock exchange.
Got it. Stock exchange.
There you go. All right. And you got a ton of people there, right? So you have a ton of people. And so this article is interesting in the sense that it's like, well, yeah, rural Arkansas doesn't have the demand or the money or the people that would necessarily subscribe to services. So yeah, it's probably going to cost a little bit more to tap into the internet from rural areas. When you're in the Northeast, that's a very, very condensed, fiber-rich environment where, great book by the same dude who wrote Moneyball and The Big Short. I'm totally blanking on his name right now, but he wrote a book called Flash Boys. And great book if you're interested in fiber optics and relays and stuff. It's about these guys who connected the New York Stock Exchange to the Mercantile Exchange in Chicago and front-run a bunch of trades and made a ton of money. And they're still doing it today, even though they'd say they're not. Great book.
Michael Lewis.
Michael Lewis. Yes. Awesome book. Read it, called Flash Boys. A lot of fun. So fiber, very, very fiber dense, rich environments over there. As you go further out into rural America, there's different ways of accessing that, and government subsidies. And, you use words like digital divide and kind of words that kind of spark conflict. But at the same time, people move out to the rural communities. And after the pandemic, a lot of people, Boise, Idaho was one of the fastest growing remote workforce. I think everybody from Seattle to Sacramento to San Diego was moving to Boise and really taking off the local people from Boise. You had remote workers out there in Boise, Idaho, and you have remote workers moving to Arizona and Texas, and people moved down to Florida. And to me, that digital divide will be addressed by the market, right? As people figure out how to get satellite internet going better. You got things like Starlink system. You got other capabilities going across, 5G. People are just dropping wireless into their house, leveraging 5G. We've seen some really cool stuff, some remote wireless services that are leveraging different carrier networks, regardless of what provider they are. So that kind of SIM-less wireless capabilities. There's a group we're working with that does some really cool stuff there. We're demoing out some of their products for our remote services. I get what these guys are saying in this article. But at the same time, kind of want to challenge, like, well, yeah, it's called scarcity. When you have a lot of something, it's cheaper.
The Northeast internet value is almost 30% higher than the U.S. average. Okay. The remaining regions perform similarly to one another and are more than 20% behind the Northeast. 75% of the country is pretty much the same speed. The Northeast is really fast. Got it. Next article.
Yeah. If you go to the research, and we don't have time to go into it today, but if you go at the bottom, there's a link around the research material. It does give you some cool like speeds and feeds, landlocked states versus states that are not landlocked, and some density trends like that. So it is interesting. Yeah. I'm always curious, like this. So what do you propose we do about it?
Yes,
right? So
that's a great point. Exactly.
And also the idea of, yes, population. So people with money and availability of services. So you have supply and demand drive prices, and then they also drive development. So got it.
I did learn an interesting little fact, and for anybody going on Jeopardy or drink at a pub quiz, New Jersey, 1,062 people per square mile. Wyoming, under 6 people per square mile.
Yeah, not a ton of people in Wyoming. Not a dense state.
On to the next story. This comes from Channel Company, crn.com. Rackspace security incident causes thousands to lose email service. So this is rough for clients. This is rough for Rackspace, and it looks like it started last. Am I right, Adam? It started last Friday?
Yeah, it looks like it initiated last Friday. It's still an ongoing situation, and in these types of incidents, you always want to wish the provider and their clients, the best outcome, right? So you definitely want to kind of treat this as, hey, how did it happen? What can we learn from it? Where did the potential, event go wrong? And then are people able to recover and restore and get their email back in an operational state effectively? So pretty significant outage, pretty significant hit. We've seen some recommendations and some responses online from the folks over at Rackspace. We wish them well as they're dealing with this with their clients. But yeah, it looks like they got significantly hit. They're recovering email flow and things like that, recommending that their folks move to a Microsoft tenant. Still, things seem not quite sure about old emails or anything like that, but it's definitely a developing situation. And like we always say, in the event any of our partners or customers need assistance, we see these all the time from an incident response, incident containment standpoint. Having a backup of your mail, having a backup of your Microsoft environment, and just having an immutable copy is definitely some areas and lessons learned I'm sure folks can have as far as just maintaining awareness there. So this one's developing. It's still an ongoing active situation.
Wish everybody well. Hope it gets resolved soon. So in the article, it mentions that people on social media, on Twitter, were blunt and immediate with their thoughts. And I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds like Twitter, putting people on blast and then disappearing into the Twitterverse.
Yeah, and those, and those types of things happen, and people are gonna shout, and the mob is gonna be the mob. I think from these kind of situations, definitely want to, understand the response is really, really important. I think some of the frustration that was voiced, at least that I saw on Twitter and online, was some of the response that went out and how the crisis was dealt with. So something that we help folks with in business continuity and disaster recovery is that crisis communication plan. When something does go wrong, one, how are you defining it? And how are you basically kind of hitting the button saying, hey, we're in a crisis communication plan. And then how are you communicating with the public and with your customers about status? Because when things go wrong, people can be forgiving, but it's really, really, really important how you communicate and how you let people know what's going on and keep them up to date as best you can.
That's a great plan of action and things to consider. And I know we're kind of ending on a sober note, but I think it's also an important thing to talk about. So I'm glad we took a second to discuss the Rackspace situation. Adam, thank you so much for joining me for the incident report. Everybody listening, thank you for joining us as well. And we'll see you next week.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks so much for listening. The Incident Report is brought to you by Quest Technology Management. With over 40 years of experience, Quest is a leading technology integrator working seamlessly with your staff and systems to achieve your IT goals. Learn more about everything they do at questsys.com. And if you have questions or suggestions for the podcast, you can always email Adam and myself at theincidentreport@questsys.com. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.